All right, so last week we talked about how to iteratively roll things out, and one of the discussions, I think, Bob, I think you brought it up, was, when are systems something that are red tape and when are they something that's productive? And really it comes back to something that it's about playing to win versus playing not to lose. And where that ties in is when systems are being built to drive effectiveness and efficiency, when they're being built to creatively develop smart solutions, you're being aggressive to play to win, as opposed to when you're building systems that are protective and preventative, then you're playing not to lose. And where this really comes in, a lot of times is in sports. In football, you've got a lot of times when you've got two teams. Let's say we've got the Go Brand Go greens, because we want to be in the green, versus the P&L reds, because we don't want to be in the red. And a lot of times when football comes into play, you can have a team that will get up early and then they'll go into what's called a prevent defense, is where it's kind of a bend, don't break, and they'll get 10, 20 yards at a time, but what they're trying to do is to make them run clock off and not be able to score 3 touchdowns before the game ends. The problem in business is there's not a clock. And so if you go into a prevent defense and you play not to lose, eventually you're going to lose because there is no clock. The game keeps going and it keeps going. And so where it really comes into play is it's kind of a field position game in the grand scheme of things, because you're always progressing, you're always trying to grow, you're always trying to advance things. So, it's what you hope to do then is, be offensive on offense and defensive on defense, as opposed to kind of the other way around. And so if you think about from a field position standpoint, if you get the ball, say on the 20-yard line, and you progress 30 yards to the or 20 yards to the 50, and then you go on defense and they come back 10 yards, and then you take the ball back on offense and you go back and forth like this. And what you hope is that over time that you're progressing more on offense than they are on defense, and at some point you can get into the end zone and have a win. And so this is kind of playing the field position game of you want to really try to focus on advancing further than they do on you. And the same thing kind of comes into play. We talked about a while back about kind of personal growth, when you've got the kind of being in the zone and kind of making sure that you've got times where you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, but then times that you come back and recharge. The same thing happens in this instance. If you look at what's going on here, is reality, you've got kind of this phenomenon going on. And where this comes into play is you've got offense here, defense here, offense here, defense here, offense, and so forth and so on. And the key here is to make sure that when you are on offense, you're being aggressive and you're playing to win. When you're on defense, you don't go into a prevent defense and just making sure that things aren't crashing down around you, is you play defense to win. And where in offense, playing to win means that you're really iteratively aggressive. And then on defense, you're taking the time and you're acting quickly and deliberately. So what this means is when you're on offense, you're trying new things. You need to be out there innovating, and you need to be pushing the envelope, and you need to be stretching yourself, and you need to be trying new things and rolling them out, and like we talked about last week, on an iterative basis that you can really focus on getting better quickly. But then when the tide turns, so if this is, if you're an airplane and you're going up as fast as you can, as hard as you can, and you run out of fuel, and you come to that peak and you start coming back down, at that point you've got to act quickly and you have to act deliberately. It's not good enough just to say, this will pass, this will be fine, or just kind of pulling the covers up over your head and hoping that, this too shall pass type situation. You have to act quickly and you have to act deliberately. So if that means you need to kick some of the products or services off the plane to lighten load, so be it. If you've got to cut staff back because some people are underperforming, you need to do it quickly and deliberately. Now, what this doesn't mean is you get to here and you panic. This doesn't say panic quickly and deliberately. You just have to act quickly and deliberately. So it doesn't mean that you're kicking everybody off the plane. That means that you're just you need to cut back, kind of cut the fat, don't cut to the bone. And on the other side, when you're on offense, you're not screaming straight up. You're taking it at an angle at a nice even plane. And so over time, what you've got to hope is that your offense is going to outpace your defense, and you keep growing and you keep iteratively going in that direction. In the same sense of when it's in personal and professional growth, that you can push yourself, but then take times to come back and really respond from that. And so what the lesson that I want you to take away from this is you've got to know when you're on offense, and you got to know when you're on defense. And when you're on offense, be on offense. This isn't when, we talked a lot of times about balance. We talked a while ago about you want to stay centered and you want to make sure that you're focused in on keeping centered and keeping balanced. So if you're being overly aggressive on offense, this is kind of, in football terms, this is kind of your Hail Mary. And, you're just, all three passes, you're just chucking it for the end zone. Yeah, it might work, but more likely than not, if you try to go from here to here in one pass, more likely than not, it's either going to intercept it or it's going to be 3 straight incompletions. In the same sense, if you're overly conservative, that's going to be kind of a fullback dive. So that's just the fullback takes the handoff and runs straight up the middle 3 straight times. So if that's the case, you're so conservative that you're never going to get enough height to be able to really get off the ground enough for if you do have something that happens and you have to be defensive, you don't have enough air underneath you to recover before you crash into the ground. In the same sense, from the defensive perspective, if you're overly conservative and you go into a prevent defense before you've really achieved much height, what'll end up happening is you don't make the decisions fast enough that are going to allow you to adjust accordingly. And so you're going to give up more field position, and this might come lower and lower and lower. And if you haven't achieved enough aggressiveness on offense, what's going to happen is you're going to hit the ground, and the P&L Reds will score, and you're going to be in the red. On the opposite side of the stage is if you're kind of bringing the house and you're blitzing everyone you're blitzing your cornerbacks and you're blitzing your safeties, kind of like a field goal block on every play. What's going to happen is more likely you're trying to overcompensate and be too aggressive and trying to be almost offensively on defense. And more often than not, what's going to happen is they're going to score on you. So once again, they're going to take this interception and come back here, and you're going to be out of business or not profitable. And so the key is you got to stay balanced. And this is, you got to have your plan for offense and defense. And so you've got to understand when you're on offense, what does that look like? How aggressive are you going to be? What are you rolling out? This comes back to the strategic planning on making sure that you've got your goals. It comes back to the bracketing of growth that we've talked about. We want to stay within the 20 to 40% bracket. We've got our plan on offense. On defense, you've got to have a strategy for what's going to happen, but more often than not, you don't know what's coming until it comes, but you've got to act quickly and deliberately. And this is why we have the conversations that we have as a team, and when something happens, we do act quickly and we act deliberately, and we make decisive decisions and we move on. And that's the key, is that you have to really have that balance and understand what's going on and be able to adjust accordingly. And so if you can continue to understand and play to your strategy and play to your plan, then you're going to have the times where you've got to kind of recoil and come back, but then you're going to have times where you can iterate and explode out, and then you're going to have to recoil and then explode out. And that's kind of the trajectory of growth. In the same way that we've talked about before, kind of stair-step growth, this is the same phenomenon. It's just kind of repositioned in that perspective.